Well, hello there, vinyl community. I haven't done one of these videos in a while. I think the last one I did was the vinyl tag at the start of the year. I wanted to talk about a couple different topics, some records I've been listening to, Record Store Day. But the majority of this video, I'm going to talk about the 50th anniversary of the Grateful Dead's tour of Europe. So those of you who don't like the Dead or don't find that interesting, just once I start talking about that, you can bail from this video if that doesn't interest you. So first off, Record Store Day, cool, vinyl community. We all love Record Store Day. There were some things I wasn't able to get, but I was able to get the two titles that I was really interested in. I was able to get. So real quick, the two that I was really jazzed about is, well, Jazz Sabbath Volume 2. If you're not familiar with this, it's a jazz ensemble that covers Black Sabbath songs. And it's great jazz, and I love me some Sabbath, and it's just great stuff. The second thing, and more about this later, was April 8th, 1972. This is the second night of the Grateful Dead's Europe 72 tour, now available on vinyl. These are, I'll get to this when I start to talk about Europe 72. So people that don't want to hear about that can just skip that whole part. So just some all around like new music I've been listening to. If you're not familiar with him, this is the latest album by Curtis Harding. He's a neo soul artist. Second album I've picked up by him. They're both great, but this one's on a completely just higher level. I got turned on to him from KXP in Seattle. Neo soul, just great stuff. In the jazz world, I listen to a fair amount of jazz, and I think this is the best jazz album I've heard in a couple months. New to me. I think it was reissued a couple years back, so it's not super new, but it's on Blue Note. The drummer is named Pete LaRocca. The album is called Basra. Joe Henderson appears on it. It's just great jazz. I don't know what else I can really say about it. This is the newest album, although it's a few years old at this point, by Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. The album is called Wrong Creatures. They're maybe not as big as they were a couple years back, but I think this is a really, really strong offering by them. Every time I listen to it, I think it gets better. Just a really cool new album from Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. And lastly, we had a record store show in Northern Virginia a little over a week ago, and it was the first one that I've seen in Northern Virginia in a very long time. And I just I like vintage records in general, and I've become a real big fan of the later Hollies after Graham Nash was gone from the band. I picked this album up, Distant Light. I think this is from about 1969 or 70. Long Cool Woman's on this album. I've picked up three of these later Hollies albums, and I think this is the best one of the three. I was just blown away by how good this record was. So, yeah. So here's where you people that don't like the Dead can just bail. First off, there's a really good podcast I'd recommend called The Grateful Dead Cast. It's the official podcast of the Grateful Dead. And right now we're in the middle of the 50th anniversary of the Dead's 72 tour of Europe. So this podcast, just all the seasons of this podcast are really worth listening to. This season, they're covering the Europe 72 tour. Kind of the history of how the songs developed, just a lot of Dead history in general. And they're going through every show in the tour and kind of given like a history of um, just crazy stuff that happened when the Dead were on tour. So the great thing about that tour is that they knew going into it that they were financing the tour, that they were going to record every show in the hopes of putting out an album, which they did. They released a triple live album called Europe '72. It came out in the, around '72, and but every night was recorded. So for years, I've got bootleg recordings of a lot of these shows because those Deadheads, we we're spoiled rotten. We got tons of live Dead recordings in high quality that we can listen to, and the tapes that showed leaked a long time ago. So there have been um, really good recordings of that tour in circulation for a while. But anyway, so there were excellent recordings of every show, and they were just, some people may say this was the Dead were never any better than they were in 1972. So there have been a lot of releases of these recordings over the years. Um, Obviously, Jerry Garcia passed away in 1995. So the record company um, pressured the band to say, "Hey, can we have some stuff from the archives? You got a lot of live recordings. Obviously, there's not going to be any new Grateful Dead without Jerry." They wanted they wanted a double CD recording, and they said they wanted something from the New York '72 tour. So the first official release that came out in the '90s was this show. This is called 100 Year Hall. This comes from the Frankfurt show in Germany. I believe this was Frankfurt. Yeah, this is the Frankfurt show, April 26th. A couple years after that, they do a release. I'm not sure which one came out first, but they did a release called Rockin' the Rhine, another German show. I think it was the 2 nights before that, Dusseldorf, Germany. A 3 CD show with a little bit of filler from some other shows. That was the second archival release that we saw. Then they put out this guy, Steppin' Out, England '72. So these are some highlights. This is a 4 CD set of kind of highlights from just shows from Britain. So some highlights from the legs that they kind of bounce back and forth across the channel. These are highlights from various shows that they played in the UK. 4 CD set. Finally, in 2011, they said, screw it. They just released everything. All 22 nights of the tour were released on compact disc. So anyone that was into the Dead was immediately deluged with an avalanche of recordings from the Europe '72 tour. I grabbed a random assortment, what I could afford, what I could get my hands on. So I think at this point I've probably heard every show on the tour. Um, they're all available on streaming like Spotify or whatever your streaming platform of choice is. But just so you can know, for those of you who are in the physical media, I was able to get these shows. Copenhagen, April 17th. London Lyceum Theatre, May 25th. This is the night before the final night of the tour. Dusseldorf, April 24th. So this is the same show that was released as Rockin' the Rhine. This is the entire show as originally played, which is the case with all these releases. Bickershaw. This was a show in England, Northern England, May 7th, 1972. Rotterdam, Holland, May 11th, '72. Lille, France, May 13th, '72. They released all 22 shows. Those are the ones I was able to get, and then they went out of print. Then vinyl became a big, huge thing, and record store became a big, huge thing. Last year, we got May 3rd, Paris, France, released on vinyl. I'm recording this video on May 3rd. So, yeah, I'm recording this video on the 50th anniversary of this outstanding show. One of two nights the Dead played in Paris. And then last week, Record Store Day, they gave us the second night of the tour, Wembley in England. That was April the 8th. So, through a combination of this podcast, I've kind of been listening to all these shows and just refamiliarizing myself with Europe 72. It's even greater than I remembered it being. But for those of you in the vinyl community, those are some of the official releases that, if you're interested in Europe 72, that's what's out there. There's actually going to be one more release coming out, I believe, in July. They're doing a box set of the last 4 nights. It's going to be like a $600 beast, and that's more than even I can handle. It's going to be on vinyl. But those are the official releases that are out there. The tour is an embarrassment of riches. Every night is totally worth listening to. Some nights are probably better than others, but there's not a bad show in any of it. The Dead were just absolutely at the top of their game. So if you're new to this, you want to go out on the streaming services, what are some of the shows that you should check out? Or, if you're new to this, what would you want to listen to? It's all good. I think you could do worse than just listening to the 2 Paris shows. They're both incredible. There's a different flavor to each one. The third is a little bit more of a high energy show. I'm a little more Pigpen on that show. The second night is maybe a little more trippy with a long dark star. You could do worse than just picking those 2 shows and seeing what you think. Which is the best night? I don't know if I could pick just one night that was like the best. They're all just so freaking good, but I will point out a few things. The Dick Lotfla, the archivist, the guy who kind of stewarded the Dead's tape archive for a long time, he thought Rotterdam, May 11th, was the best night of the tour. And he was the guy who collected all their tapes. I don't know if I agree with him, but that was his opinion. I believe this Dark Star is the longest Dark Star that the Dead ever played. I think I read that somewhere, but you might like the Rotterdam show. I think there's a lot to be said for Bickershaw. This was everything indicated that this show was going to be a complete catastrophe. The weather was awful. It was an outdoor show. I believe it was a festival show. It was outdoors in northern England. It was cold. It was rainy. The weather sucked. And it was not a Deadhead crowd. It was a northern England coal miner crowd. Everything indicated that this show was going to be an absolute fiasco. They started playing. They started warming up. They kind of adapted to the cold weather. The audience started to get into it. They won over the audience, and they just put on an absolute barn burner, slow burn show that just got better and better as the day progressed. I know a lot of people consider this to be one of the high points of the tour. It's a fairly famous show in Dead circles. The Bickershaw show is pretty amazing. They're all good. They're all good. I actually kind of have a soft spot for May the 25th, the next to the last night. It's just kind of a mellow show. It's not a lot of drama compared to some of the other shows. It's just very well played, kind of a little bit of a mellower set. Uncle John's Wharf Rat showed songs that weren't played quite so much on that tour. I'm going to post an image that I got from a website that shows the map and the song frequency Yeah, I believe. Yeah, Wharf Rat was played how many times on the tour? It was maybe played more than I thought, but I got this graphic which I'm going to put in the links, which shows you how many times in a tour certain songs were played, some statistics, and a map that they followed. So, what was the best show? If I had to pick one, I would say that when they were approached to pick a show initially in the 90s and they went with Frankfurt, I think their instincts were right. Apparently, when Phil Lesh heard the tapes of the show, he was just floored by what he heard. Um, Again, every night's good, but some of the playing on the Frankfurt show, 100 Year Hall, is just otherworldly. This is maybe exceptionally good playing on this one. There's some pretty just amazing stuff on this disc. This may be the best one from the tour, but they're all good. As far as bang for your buck, the 4 disc compilation, Stepping Out, it's highlights. So you got four CDs worth of material, and it's just a good cross section of songs that appeared on the tour, all played in England. And I will mention that this is the only Black Peter they played on the tour, and kind of I went through a fairly long period of about 13 years where I didn't listen to the Dead for a variety of reasons. And in the early 2000s, I started getting back into listening to the Dead again. And my timing was really good because this CD came out around that same time. And when I was younger, I just never paid any attention to Black Peter. I thought it just didn't. Some of those slow songs like Stella Blue or whatever, just whatever. So I never really paid much attention to Black Peter. When I heard this disc, I was like, holy smokes, that's the best song on the set. The Black Peter on here is just absolutely just so beautiful. So yeah, I guess I was a little bit older and I began to appreciate just how beautiful some of these Jerry ballads really were. But if you want bang for your buck, this is just 4 CDs of just top notch Europe 72. So anyway, it's the 50th anniversary. Check out that podcast if you're really into this stuff. All of these, again, some of this stuff is either out of print or rapidly going out of print. We just had a recent record store release with the Wembley show, but all of it's available on streaming services. I'm going to put some notes in the comment section for the podcast and some references if you're interested in learning more about the Europe 72 tour. But if you're at all into the Dead, do yourself a favor and listen to as much of the Europe 72 tour as you can handle. It's all good. So thanks, Final Community. You all have a good night.